Hello, it's Saturday the 21st of February. You're tuned in to our late night newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Korea is gradually returning to regular day-to-day life this weekend after the three-day Lunar New Year holiday wrapped up on Friday. Millions of Koreans made trips back to their hometowns, as is customary over major holiday periods, and it appears a significant number waited until this Saturday to return to Seoul, as the nation's major expressways were fairly congested earlier in the day, but conditions, beside the rain, are looking pretty good right now. The estimated travel time from the southern port city of Busan is just under 4.5 hours. From Gwangju in the southwest, it will take you rather quick 3.5 hours, and from Gangneung on the east coast, expect a smooth journey of just over 2 hours. For real-time traffic information on all of the major cities to Seoul, check out roadplus.co.kr. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has overseen an artillery and landing exercise by frontline units deployed near the West Sea, as the North flexed its own military muscles ahead of annual US-South Korea exercises. Pyongyang state-run media reported on Saturday that the drill was focused on training for striking and seizing an island. The report said the North's 4th Corps, which led the deadly shelling of South Korea's Yeonpyeong-do Island back in 2010, also played a key role in the drill. A South Korean daily also carried pictures, as you can see there, of Kim inspecting the drill and watching over the firing of the missiles. The report made no mention of when or exactly where these exercises took place. North Korea has backed away from an earlier promise to hold discussions with the United Nations and the European Union on its human rights issues. Voice of America reported on Saturday that Pyongyang's representative to the UN said his country would no longer be cooperating with the international community on the matter. The official accused the United States of using human rights as a pretext to overthrow the Kim Jong-un regime. The UN Human Rights Council plans to draw up a new resolution on North Korea's human rights violations next month at a meeting in Geneva. Last December, the UN Security Council placed North Korea's grave human rights abuses on its agenda for ongoing attention. South Korea has flatly denied rumours the trilateral military intelligence sharing agreement it signed with Japan and the United States late last year is linked to a speculated establishment of an interoperable missile defence system in the south. Seoul's defence ministry issued the statement on Saturday after a senior official at the US State Department said it was important for Seoul, Washington and Tokyo to develop such a system to counter the nuclear and missile threat posed by North Korea. Critics say the US would use it as a means of keeping a rising China in check. Seoul says it's building its own Korean air and missile defense system in a way that is interoperable with the US, not with Japan. South Korea and China are expected to take a big stride forward next week in terms of their long-planned free trade agreement. High-level trade ministry official in Seoul says the two sides have reached agreement on a number of previously unresolved technical issues during closed-door talks. The official says that once the tentative accord is signed, the Korean government will announce the details of the FTA. The pact, which is aimed at removing most of the trade barriers between the two countries, could take effect this year if the ratification process goes through nice and smoothly. This, of course, is a massive deal for Korea, as China is by far and away Korea's biggest trading partner. Last year, Korean exports to China were worth more than $145 billion US. Greece has secured some much-needed breathing space after reaching a deal with Eurozone finance ministers on its bailout package. Brussels has agreed to extend the loan to Athens by 4 months. In return, Greece has promised to honour all of its financial commitments in a timely manner. Jim Young-gil reports.
The deal struck by European finance officials on Friday will unlock further aid from Greece's $273 billion bailout package and extend the deal for another 4 months.
There is a hope to reach, in the end, a positive outcome, to have a successful review and conclusion of the program in time, and that required trust. And I think tonight was a first step in this process of rebuilding trust. As you know, trust comes or leaves quicker than it comes.
On Monday, Greece must send its creditors a list of all the reforms it plans to take over the next 4 months. If the measures are deemed acceptable, European finance ministers could sign off on an extension of the bailout agreement on Tuesday. If ratified, the deal will end weeks of uncertainty since the election of a leftist-led government in Athens, which had pledged to reverse austerity.
Today, we have found partners amongst those who, up until very recently, looked at us with suspicion. There are some partners still that are looking at us with suspicion. This is our challenge to win over their trust, and we intend to do this.
Greece's biggest creditor, Germany, had demanded a significant improvement in reform commitments by Athens before it would accept an extension of Eurozone funding. Without an extension of international support, Greece risked a run on its banks and would have had trouble paying its bills. 2 previous attempts to secure an agreement in the last 10 days had failed. The euro gained ground on news of the deal, but European markets have largely taken the uncertainty over Greece's fate in their stride. Jim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, Russia's credit rating has been downgraded to junk by credit rating agency Moody's, which says the crisis in Ukraine, the tumbling price of oil and the weak ruble have severely undermined Russia's economic strength. In a statement Friday, Moody's cut Russia's rating 1 notch to Ba1 from Baa3 with a negative outlook. And this marks the first time Russia has slipped below investment grade in well over 10 years. The agency added that Russia will experience a deep recession this year and a continued contraction in 2016. The cut comes a month after S&P lowered Russia to junk, assigning the country a BB+ rating, also with a negative outlook. Yemen's former president has left the capital after Shiite rebels let him go following several weeks of house arrest. Aides to Abdurabu Mansour Hadi said he is headed to Aden, his hometown in the south of the country. They added that the former leader will soon leave Yemen entirely to receive medical treatment overseas. The rebels had been under intense international pressure to let him go after the UN Security Council adopted a resolution this week demanding they restore him and his US-backed government. Now, members of the Islamic State militant group have claimed responsibility for bomb attacks that killed at least 40 people in eastern Libya on Friday. 3 bombs went off in the town of Kubar, targeting a petrol station, a police station, and the home of a Libyan lawmaker. You're seeing the bloody aftermath of the blasts there. The militant group says the bombings were revenge for the bloodshed of Muslims in Derna, which has been the target of Egyptian airstrikes since last week. Cairo launched airstrikes after an IS affiliate beheaded 21 Egyptian Christians it had kidnapped. A Libyan government official says 8 of those killed in Friday's bomb attacks were Egyptians who had come to Libya for work. Police in the United Kingdom are appealing for information regarding 3 missing schoolgirls it fears are travelling to Syria via Turkey, possibly to join the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. The 15 and 16-year-old girls from East London on Tuesday booked seats on a Turkish Airlines flight to Istanbul, but told their families as they left their homes that they were just planning to spend the day together. 2 of the girls have been identified as Shamima Begum, who is 15, and 16-year-old Khadija Sultana. The third girl, 15 years old, has not been named at the request of her family. Now, the families told police that they had seen no evidence the girls were being radicalized and are said to be devastated. Efforts to get in touch with the girls via their cell phones have failed thus far. Police hope unusually cold weather and heavy snow in Turkey may have prevented them getting to the Turkey-Syria border. Now, on a much lighter note, artisans in Korea have revived the craft of gold thread embroidery, lost for 300 years after it was banned in Korea all the way back in the 17th century. Now, it's a very tricky process, and artisans and experts have worked tirelessly to reconstruct the technique. Our Son Jung-in reports.
The Korean movie The Royal Tailor, or Sangwon, revolves around the majestic attire worn by the royal family during the Joseon dynasty. The garments are characterized by their gold embroidery, but the craft disappeared after King Yeongjo prohibited the production of extravagant items during the latter half of the 17th century. Now, after nearly 300 years, the craft has been reborn. To make the gold thread, artisans carefully gild mulberry paper with a special glue and then slice the sheets into pieces of thread. Using a lace-making loom, they carefully embroider intricate patterns onto the fabric. The technique was recovered after 4 years as researchers and artisans pored over literature and studied ancient relics.
The most difficult part was selecting the suitable materials, since the properties of the available items are very different now from back then.
With the recovery of gold thread embroidery technique, artisans have been able to restore the original forms of other relics as well, including a Joseon-era jeogori or hanbok jacket. Through the tireless efforts of these artisans, the traditional textile craft is recovering its lost light. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, before we go, leaving you with a very brief look at the weather, and it has been and continues to be a relatively wet Saturday across most of Korea. The rain should let up by early Sunday morning in the central region, giving way to partly cloudy skies. Now, for our viewers around the world, here's a look at the weather conditions around the world. OK, well, that's all we have for now. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye.